Hello, crafty friend, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Adrienne of Alice Scraps Wonderland. I'm so excited to be a guest designer for Scrap Diva Designs this month, and I'll be sharing several projects with you through early April. But today, I wanted to do an unboxing of my guest designer package and share a tutorial with you where I create a scrapbook layout with nested shapes, flowers, and birds, perfect for spring. First, let's open up this package. I've received several spring and Easter inspired designs. I've got a new camera, so excuse the focusing issues, but you'll see these dies many times over before the month is done. I received these flowers along with the Spring Words 2026 die set. These slimline bunnies are super adorable, and I just love the birds and layers in the Spring Memory Decks die set. I have the flower nesting set as well as the 3D egg pocket. A few of these sets have a couple of sheets of dies inside the plastic packaging, so let's take a closer look. For the words, you'll also get all of the shadows, and the nesting flowers set includes 2 sizes of these nested dies. And of course, you get all of the pieces you need to make the egg basket perfectly 3D. Today, I'm going to be using 4 of these die sets for a scrapbook layout, including the flower nesting set, the birds from the Spring Memory Decks, the Spring Words, and the flowers. I'll have all of the supplies I used listed in the description box below, so let's get right into this tutorial. I'm going to be using the smaller of the 2 flower nesting sets to create some focal points to cluster a bunch of the flowers and birds on, as well as the title. I'm using the outer doily piece and the next 2 sizes in for this nesting set. I start by die cutting the doily piece from some thick, smooth white cardstock and choose 2 pastel pink shades to cut the other 2 layers from. I cut a total of 3 sets of these. Next, I take the 2 birds from the Spring Memory Decks and also cut them from the same thick white cardstock. I'll be inking these later. And then I also cut the phrase "Wild at Heart" from the Spring Words 2026 set, along with its corresponding shadow layer. I cut the upper layer 3 times and the shadow layer once. Now, let's get to cutting these flowers. I'm using both a pearly pink cardstock and a pastel yellow cardstock to cut the flowers, and I cut a ton. I cut more than I needed, but I'm visual and like to play with my embellishments when assembling my projects, so having a bit more than I think I will need is helpful. I'm layering these flowers up in different combinations, with the largest flower getting 3 layers and other sizes using only 2 layers. I also cut a bunch of the smallest flower size to use as a single layer flower. Then I use a sage green cardstock to cut the leaves from in this flowers die set. And you've probably been seeing me stack all of my die cuts into some little trays to keep them safe until I'm ready to work with these pieces further. After die cutting everything I need, I add some sewing to some of the pieces. These dies already have the Scrap Diva signature debossed sewing design around the edge, so I'm just adding this stitching with my sewing machine for some added texture. Here you can see me sewing on the 2 pink flower nesting set layers and some rectangles that I trimmed to map my photo on. I leave the strings on these long and trim them down later if needed. You can see as I'm adding foam adhesive to the backs of these nested layers that my tension wasn't quite right. I did adjust it as I went, but honestly no one is going to see the backs and the foam adhesive is going to help keep these threads from pulling loose. Once the lighter pink layer is adhered to the darker pink layer with foam adhesive, I use adhesive roller to add this to the white doily layer, then poke out all the little bits still stuck in my die cut. Next, I add the photo to the lighter pink mat with roller adhesive, and then add that to the darker pink with foam adhesive. Let's add some depth to these flowers with a bit of ink. I'm adding Victorian Velvet Distress Oxide to the pearlescent pink flowers with a small blending brush. Then I use squeezed lemonade Distress Oxide on the yellow flowers and bundled sage on the leaves. To add a little hint of blue to these birds, I applied Distress Oxide and Speckled Egg to the head, back, wing, and tail of each bird. I then glue the 3 upper layers of each of the spring words together using liquid adhesive. To help the layers press together, I stick a heavy stamp block over them. Once those top layers are glued together, I add squeezed lemonade Distress Oxide ink to the words. Then I use that same liquid glue to add the inked words to the shadow layer. My niece is wild at heart, which is why I chose this fun phrase from the set. If you are enjoying this tutorial, don't forget to give this video a like and to hit the subscribe button. Now it's time to start adding it all to the scrapbook page. I'm using a combination of foam, roller, and liquid adhesives to add everything. I like to use a variety of thickness for foam adhesive, including 1, 2, and 3 mm thick foam. This allows for easy layering and dimension. Once I have it dry fitted and foam adhesive on, I then add these flower nesting shapes and the matted photo to the page. Before adding the flowers, I give them a hint of dimension with some shaping tools. This helps those layers pop on the multi-layered flowers. I start by using a larger tool size on the back of the flower to warm the paper fibers up. Then once it's pliable, I flip the flower over and push a bit in the center of the flower. I also add some shaping to the leaves as well, using the same techniques and tools. I like to glue these flower layers together on the shaping mat so I can use the shaping tool to press the two layers of the flowers together really well. Once the flowers are shaped and dry fit to the layout, I begin gluing those and the title down. I start by adding some 1mm thick foam to the title and pop it onto the center of one of the flower nesting shapes. And then I go wild adding flowers and leaves to this layout using liquid adhesive and foam rounds. You can see that I clustered most of the flowers on the nested shapes, but I also added 2 clusters on the background paper as well. I always love adding a ton of flowers, but if you like less, you can add as little or as many as you want. After the flowers are glued down, I add some glitter drops to the center of each flower with a dot of liquid glue. And then I add some of these iridescent gems in the negative spaces. The finishing touch is to add those little birds. I first use my finger to gently curve the wings up and then add them with a foam round or liquid adhesive. And that's it. I just love using nested shapes like these to allow my embellishments to take center stage in little clusters like this. It's also a great way to easily add dimension and texture to your projects. Be sure to drop any questions you have in the comments. And until next time, happy crafting!